I flipped the page. I shouldn't have flipped the page.
Thanks, Guy. I'm sure some of you in the room were happy he was just about to move my report before I even spoke. All right. Well, hello, Regina. Hello, Regina. All right, it's great to see everyone again. Welcome to your Unifor Prairie Regional Council for 2024, and happy May Day. Happy International Workers' Day. This is the real Labor Day as far as I'm concerned, and we're going to have some presentations on that later today, but happy May Day to everyone. I also have to say it's very nice to be back in Regina at a time when the weather isn't minus 40, and of course I see snow outside, so I don't know what you're cooking up here, but I was here actually a week or two ago to say hello to our amazing activists that we're training right now for our member-to-member campaign for the Saskatchewan election, but I'll talk more about that a bit later. And of course, Regina will always have a special place in our union's heart, because this is where the massive battle to help our crown workers who were locked out and on strike in 2019 went down. And I was here on the picket lines with many of those members. Thousands of Unifor members filled the streets here and tried their best to make a heartless and uncaring government listen. Listen to the workers. Help us instead of hurting us. But of course it fell on deaf ears. And of course we can never forget what went down here shortly after that made Unifor history and Canadian labour movement history. The brave workers at Unifor Local 594 at the Co-op refinery faced down a ruthless employer flush with billions in profits. Their greed knew no bounds, and they were determined to break the union. We saw this employer go to extreme lengths to try to break the union, building a scab camp, flying in scabs to the facility in helicopters over the picket lines, relying on the courts and the Regina Police Service, or the Refinery Police Service, whatever you want to call it. They tried to break the union, but they didn't succeed. Unifor members from across the country, many of you in this room, came to walk in solidarity on freezing cold picket lines. They tried to arrest us. I was one of those arrested here in town, and I became a guest of the Regina Police Service for a few hours. But they didn't succeed. No one ended up getting convicted of anything. They didn't break Unifor, and they didn't break Local 594. And I know this because Nathan Kramer, the current president of Local 594, is here with us today. I think he's in the back, along with great Local 594 delegates. And I can tell you they are as active as ever. Thank you. Now, you know, on a side note, I hear that your radio options in this town have just gotten even worse. We knew that John Gormley was a terrible right-wing AM radio host and that his replacement wouldn't be any better. But Evan Bray, the chief of the Regina Police Service during the lockout, as the new replacement, the huge billboard outside this hotel with his picture, did you see that? Anyway, I know we have some good SaskTel billboards out there. We've got to get a few more out there and get rid of that Evan Bray billboard and maybe get off AM radio and onto some FM rock and roll or something. Anyway, we'll talk more about Saskatchewan later, but before I go any further, I do want to thank the many special guests who've traveled here from Unifor's National Executive Board and members of our senior staff team. We have, of course, my friend, our National Secretary-Treasurer, Len Poirier, is here. We have, give him a round of applause. And the person who had to travel the farthest and sympathizes the most with me about time change problems, certainly appreciated, my good friend Jennifer Murray, our Atlantic Regional Director, is here today. Welcome, Jennifer. And we also have a strong group from Quebec, led by mon ami, the Quebec Director, Danielle Cloutier, who is here with his assistant, Myriam Germain. And we've actually invited Daniel to come and say a few words later this council, so you'll hear from him as well. We also have, and I'll probably miss someone, Unifor National Executive Board members with us. Dirk Tolman is somewhere in the room representing the energy sector. There he is back there. Tammy Moore is here representing the aviation sector. Can always tell where 2002 is in the house. And Les McDonald, I think, is out if he's not in here right now, representing retirees. There he is over there. And of course, our national president, Lana Payne, will be here tomorrow and later this week. And if I missed anyone, my apologies. We also have our senior leadership team. Executive assistant to the national president, Roxanne Dubois, is here. Executive assistant to the secretary-treasurer, Sari Saranen, is here. And we also have senior directors, Katha Fortier and John Orman are somewhere in the room as well. I can't see that well. Now, there's so much going on in the Western region across 4 provinces. I do have to thank the BC chairperson, Leanne Marsh, and of course, my friend and comrade, Guy DeForge. And also, we have our area directors, 3 of them in the West, Mario Santos in BC, Steve Kerrigan as the area director for Alberta, and of course, Frank Wright is the area director for Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and he replaced Paul Mackay last summer. And we've kept, by the way, Paul Mackay busy as well. He's now on the Manitoba Labour Board. So thank you, Frank, and thank you for Paul for everything you did for our union. And of course, there's a great team behind this. I want to thank my assistant, who really is also known as my schedule. That's Terry Rowland, has been working her heart out for this. And we have a team of support staff. I'll try and get to them. Laura Garvey-Doucette, Marilyn Romano, Melissa Stoddart, Graham Brown, Nelson Louis, Ali Amiri, the comms team, Ian Boyko, David Mullenhouse, Conley Mustard, and of course Gina Smoke around here too. And I probably missed a bunch, but that just gives you an idea of how many people are involved putting on one of these events. And I'd like to thank all of you, and please give them a round of applause. And I especially want to thank the workers in this hotel, who are members of Unifor Local 651, represented well by their president, Della Rogers. I know I don't have to say this, but please make sure you give the workers good tips when you're out there, and tip them well. They certainly need it. They've been through tough times in the last couple of years. You'll also see in your kits a report on the amazing work done by our staff, our department, service staff, and they deserve our thanks also, because they are out there doing amazing work every single day. So please give our staff a round of applause as well. So in the past year, we have seen incredible bargaining activity for thousands of members in the West. We've expanded our efforts to organize new members. We fought one important election in Alberta. Then we went on to fight and win a historic election in Manitoba, and we helped to elect the first First Nations Premier of our province in Canada in the process. We've been fighting busy. Workers have also been busy at the bargaining table, fighting for and winning good gains to help them deal with inflation, housing, and the affordability crisis. But these gains aren't coming easy, are they? They're taking fights, tough fights, and workers still have to scrap for every single nickel they bargain. And so we must use this time to keep pushing and building our capacity to be more organized and grow more than ever. We must build to defend ourselves, build to move forward, and build to make sure that we make important progress on the many issues facing workers. Last year, many of you will remember, we had successful bargaining worker power engagement meetings all across the country. Here in the West, we had them in Edmonton, Calgary, Regina, Saskatoon, and Winnipeg. And of course, many of you were at our Canada Council in Halifax. I think it was just amazing to hear from everyone in so many different areas. We've also been active, and I went to South Korea last September. And you might wonder, what am I doing in South Korea? I went there to support the ITF, the International Transport Federation Safe Race campaign last September. We went to Seoul as part of an international ITF delegation, and we were joined by union leaders from Europe, Australia, Uganda, Ghana, and Kenya. And we were supporting the Truck Saw Union in Korea, who are 25,000 militant container truckers, and they're not even allowed to be in a union in Korea. In fact, when I was there, 2 of their leadership were currently in jail. And they had a system of minimum rates for containers that's now falling apart due to a right-wing government. We told them about the Vancouver container truckers and how we fought so hard in 2014 to establish a system of safe rates, and that has resulted in millions of dollars in unpaid wages coming back to truck drivers, and it's also made sure that the companies that weren't paying them were fined millions. So with our DHL members heading into bargaining soon, we know how important it is to have minimum rates and how easy it is for corporations to reduce the rates at will. So we're going to continue the Safe Rates campaign. You're going to hear a lot more about it, and there is a major ITF Congress coming up this year as well. Now, after the co-op refinery dispute, as you've heard, Unifor has continued to push for anti-scab protection, and in fact, we launched the National Unifor Anti-Scab campaign right here at Prairie Council, I think a couple of years ago. We're now getting closer than ever to finally getting federal anti-scab legislation put into law. Bill C-58 has been introduced into the House of Commons, and it's already passed second reading. We know that the employer community is not happy about this proposed federal anti-scab ban, and they have been furiously trying to weaken it or block it entirely. They don't want laws on the books that will restrict the workers to try to stop them from going on strike. They want to be able to break us. We can't afford to let this moment slip by, and we must push harder than ever at this critical time. Our national president, Lana Payne, appeared recently at the parliamentary committee studying Bill C-58, and she ripped into the employer arguments. And ironically, she appeared the same day that CN used scabs in the Autoport dispute. Autoport and CN Rail had bus scabs across a legal picket line in the cover of night during the first few hours of their strike, aggressively undermining the fundamental right to strike for 239 Unifor members in Halifax. While at a bargaining table with Unifor and with a conciliator, meanwhile CN was hiring and training scabs. That's not free and fair collective bargaining. I'd like to thank Corey Wills and Jason Lancaster from Local 100 and all of you who came out recently in Winnipeg during that dispute. Dozens and dozens of activists at short notice. We came out to safely send our message to CN, and we conducted effective secondary picketing in Winnipeg. We sent a strong message in those couple of days, and it was followed up by Danielle's team in Quebec with another short solidarity action shortly after. In fact, CN and Autoport were so annoyed, many of you don't know this, that they raced to get an injunction against the union. Not for what we had done in Winnipeg or even in Quebec, although they tried to use that. Guess where they came to get an injunction before we had done anything? Saskatchewan, of course. They came to Saskatchewan. So we actually had an injunction handed down, if you can believe it, against us in Saskatchewan about CN and Autoport before we did absolutely anything. That just shows you what the judges are like in this province. So anyway, didn't matter much in the end. Jen Murray and her team out there were kicking butt. Our bargaining team went back to the table. They got a collective agreement. They took it to the members. They got it ratified. They're all back at work, and the scabs can get the hell out of here. So congratulations to everyone in Local 100. Now, in addition to the anti-scab laws that are already on the books in BC and Quebec, and in addition to the federal law, Bill C-58, that's going through, we were very pleased to enthusiastically support the Manitoba government's intention, the government that we helped fight for, to introduce anti-scab legislation and single-step union certification at 50% plus one of the cards signed. You know, Manitoba had single-step certification until Brian Palliser took it away in 2016. And it was very important to know what a gain this is, because even the previous NDP government in Manitoba only had card check at 65%, and Wab Kinew has already said straight out of the gate, you know what, we're coming in 50% plus one, and it's an amazing, important step in the future, and thank you to everyone who worked on that campaign. And of course, I mentioned Jennifer Murray. She's working her heart out as well, and as part of the CN Autoport dispute, she managed to help the Nova Scotia NDP, who have also tabled anti-scab legislation as well in Nova Scotia. So we're not giving up on this fight. We're closer than ever. You'll see a recommendation in your kits. Please write the letters, make the phone calls. Let's push this through. We saw Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives vote for the anti-scab bill at second reading. We'll see if they see it all the way through, but we know however they vote, we'll take their votes to get the bill passed, but we know they'll never see them on any picket lines with our members. Now, also you'll see in your kits, Unifor has released its own Air Transportation Workers' Charter of Rights. The actions taken by the federal government and the airport authorities to solve the travel chaos, not nearly enough to solve the root of the problem: inadequate working conditions. Low airport standards contribute to delays, lost baggage, and general chaos. We want the federal government to address unsafe and unsustainable workloads, require employers to provide adequate, high-quality training, ensure a harassment-free environment, deliver a healthy and safe workplace, and ensure a say in technological change. So you'll see that. I'm sure we'll have some folks from 2002 and 531, but really it affects all of us if the airport and airline workers are not treated fairly, so please support that recommendation. Now, as you know, Unifor has campaigned for a long time to increase direct worker involvement in just transition policymaking. And we hosted the second National Conference on Climate Change and Our Jobs in Toronto last November. In June of last year, I joined Minister of Natural Resources Jonathan Wilkinson, NDP Member of Parliament Daniel Blaikie, and other representatives to help announce the tabling of Bill C-50, the Sustainable Jobs Act. Bill C-50 has now passed third reading in the House of Commons on April 15th, and the first reading in the Senate on April 16th. So we're almost there. In fact, it may have passed in the last few days. Once this is passed, the bill can become law, and Unifor will be pressing government to maximize workers' voices at the table, including a council seat created by this new law for Unifor. We need governments and businesses to commit significant funding to protect good jobs and to provide supports, including skills training, job guarantees, pension bridging, and most importantly, to ensure that no one and no communities are left behind. We hope to see that bill pass soon, and we will get that seat at the table. Sari Saarinen is over there, and she'll be hosting, I think it's tomorrow, a climate change seminar. So if you can get to that, please do that, and she can give you more updates on what came out of our conference in November. Now, housing is something, again, you'll see in your kits. And it's still, even here, where the prices are maybe not as high as BC, it's still unaffordable for many people. In fact, housing remains the single biggest expense for most Canadian households. In 2021, 1 in 10 households were in core housing need, and that's before the impact of inflation. Here we are fighting for wage increases that remotely keep up with the rapidly rising rate of inflation, but meanwhile, the housing costs are climbing even higher. Workers are handing over even higher amounts of their take-home income from one corporation, their employer, to another, the bank, the landlord. And of course, workers in equity-seeking groups, including women, immigrants, visible minorities, low-income and Indigenous workers, are more likely to live in core housing need. Now, in some provinces like BC, we're seeing important rules to protect renters, like the rental increase law, protections for tenants, and new short-term rental legislation. And we need to keep pushing for higher standards for those who rent, call out the reckless approach of the Bank of Canada, and demand relief for those with mortgages. You'll see the recommendation, please support it, and I know Lana will probably speak about that as well because she's been calling out the Bank of Canada at every chance she gets, Tiff Macklin, and I think it's having some impact because they're feeling the pressure. Now, we heard lots of reports yesterday at our leadership meeting about the incredible bargaining going on. There's way too many for me to talk about, but I do think I want to talk about some of them. There are, for those of you that weren't here yesterday, there should be a few leftover copies of the local report, so we can arrange to get those given to you or emailed to you if you want to see what was going on. But I want to talk about a couple of the amazing files. Last summer, our members at Boeing in Local 2169 ratified an absolutely groundbreaking agreement. The determination and solidarity that the local saw on the shop floor throughout those negotiations helped them win a better agreement in many areas and push the agenda forward, and most importantly on securing fully paid, employer-paid long-term disability benefits. And at Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries, after getting a strong strike mandate last December, a new collective agreement was reached days before the deadline. This is Unifor Local 144, covering more than 750 workers at Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries. Congrats to everyone on the hard work. It certainly became easier to bargain with Manitoba Crown corporations with a new government because they came in and they dismissed the boards of Manitoba Hydro and Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries, and guess what? All of a sudden bargaining got easier. So congratulations to everyone. And we just had a strike too that just wrapped up, and I'd like to thank Frank Wright and all the Winnipeg members of Local 144 at Griffin Wheels, Amstead Rail on their new agreement. They just had a recent strike, 44 days on the picket line, unwavering determination, and it paid off. They achieved substantial wage increases, and workers are going to see their wages rise by as much as $4.50 an hour over the course of the agreement. Amazing work there. And we know that this is also a very busy bargaining year for our energy workers as well, because many of them have been hard at work establishing the energy pattern and now bargaining it at many tables. In fact, dozens of locals have already ratified the pattern agreement, too many to mention, but I'll mention Local 707A. Congratulations to the locals for getting their ratifications with Suncor and also with the SMS unit. I know it was a bumpy road. It's never easy, but at the end of the day, well done on achieving a new agreement. It's gained membership support and approval. And to the rest of you still in bargaining in the energy sector, if you need your union, we're here for you, and good luck as you continue to push to get that bargain through in all of the agreements. I mentioned DHL. That's going in the fall. There are multiple locals, including here in the prairies, that are affected by that. And I won't get into too much detail on that other than we're gearing up for quite the round of bargaining because the employer has cut owner-operator rates by up to 50% in a recent reroute, causing significant financial loss to our members. And of course, when workers lose money, workers get angry, and especially when they're heading into bargaining, it's going to be a tough round. 2,400 members are going to be affected by that round of DHL bargaining. And we know that our members at Local 681 at Manitoba Hydro are actually now having more open communication with the company, and we're actually talking to the local, and we'll be reaching out to Adrian Sala and the finance minister. He's the finance minister, but also the energy critic, and trying to insert ourselves not just at the climate change table, but in terms of the energy for Manitoba Hydro, and we'll be making sure our local is part of that as well. Now, I know there's people in the room here, Regina and Calgary. I've been working recently with Local 2002 and our unit of airport security screeners in Calgary. There's about 1,000 of them. I think some of them are here in the room here today. And they were employed by Garda, and they're now faced working under a new contractor, Paladin Airport Security Services. We have members here at Local 1S in Regina going through the same transition, which happened as of April 1st. So you can imagine that kind of a transition is bumpy, and again, the members are rightfully annoyed at some of the missteps that we've seen in Calgary, but there's a strong team there. There's strong support from the local, strong support from the national. We'll get through it, and at the end of the day, I think, hopefully, in the long run, Paladin might be a little bit better of an employer than Garda. But of course, if you know Garda, that bar was pretty low. So anyway, we'll see what happens with that. Now you see the green shirts. They're not rider shirts. They're SaskTel campaign shirts in the room. And we've been working hard with the SaskTel locals. They've been working hard with the Telco Council, and they've been doing radio ads, billboards, internal, external mobilization. They're working with us on making sure that we point out that the Saskatchewan government really doesn't care about the crowns. We know they tried to privatize it, there was a blowback, and now what they're involved in is the slow drip, drip, drip of contracting out work, of not replacing jobs going on. And it's been a very troubling trend. In the last few years, we've seen over 300 jobs be gone. 10% of the unionized workforce just out the door. And more contractors coming, and many of the contractors not even from Saskatchewan. And so they're wearing these green shirts, and we're doing billboards, and we'll be doing a heck of a lot more, and you'll see the recommendation in the kits is that people support their crowns in Saskatchewan. Am I right? People support their crowns in Saskatchewan. And so we're going to make sure over the next few months that we fight for a new government, not just to help all the people in Saskatchewan, but to help our members in the crowns who so badly deserve to sit down at the bargaining table with a government that actually cares and wants to listen, as we're now starting to experience in Manitoba. So good luck. We're behind you all the way. There have been some improvements, though. I'd like to congratulate Local 649. They did manage to reach an agreement with Sask Power and Sask Energy, and I believe the Sask Water unit has also reached an agreement in Local 820. So we are making some progress, and good for you for managing to get anything out of this government. But hopefully, once we flip the government, there will be much more that we can bargain for our members. And one of our oldest local unions in the West, Local 191, somewhere in the room, at the Winnipeg Free Press. There's John. Yeah, congratulations to Local 191. They just bargained an agreement, and if you know media bargaining, it's grim bargaining these days, but they just bargained an agreement at the Winnipeg Free Press. Best wage increases they'd seen in, I think, 15 years. Is that right, John? Yeah, congratulations to everyone there on that, too. Now, you might have seen us take on Bell. In the last few months, Bell announced the largest job cuts in 30 years. And Unifor locals came back to say, shame on Bell. Yes, I hear the shame already. More than 6,000 workers they terminated in the last 8 months, while they reported $2.3 billion in profit at the end of last year. They also paid out an all-time high of $3.7 billion to shareholders at the exact same time that they were cutting jobs. Hey, they weren't done there. Between 20 and 22, let's give the CEO compensation increase of 40% in 2 years. Disgusting. So we rallied in Ottawa on March 19th, and we called out Bell Canada. They postponed a scheduled hearing before the House of Commons. They didn't want to answer questions about it, but we've now been running a campaign, you've probably seen it on Facebook and social media, against the board of directors at Bell, a who's who of Canada's elite. Most of them don't have any media experience, they don't have any telco experience, just corporate finance and shareholder profit. It's all they know. Local 7 in Manitoba has also been affected. On relocation, a whole bunch of members in Brandon were basically told, move to Winnipeg or you're out of a job. That's it. No rhyme, no reason for it, just move. Not any more efficient, not anything like that, just so that they could cut. And our Bell members will tell you that the company doesn't even have a plan for exactly where they're going to cut. They just made up a number, and now they're going to cut. Well, we're not putting up with it, and we're going to keep fighting back. Our campaign is aggressive. Len Poirier is the lead on that file, and he will tell you he has conversations with Bell every day, and believe me, they are absolutely feeling the pressure. And we're going to continue to do that, and there's lots of bargaining going on there. So please support our Bell workers. It's not much different than the telco workers. It's basically arrogant corporations thinking they can bully around our members, and we're not going to put up with it. We're going to stand with all of our telco workers from coast to coast to coast. Now, I don't know about you, but I am getting more and more disgusted. There's no other word for it. Disgusted at seeing hatred and division used as a political weapon by the right wing. From Pierre Poilievre to Danielle Smith to Scott Moe to Heather Stephenson. We spoke out immediately against Scott Moe's attempt not long ago to use vulnerable kids as part of his wedge politics, a politics of division instead of unity. We saw sudden, sweeping changes to education policy that have sadly become all too commonplace. And the safety of 2S LGBTQIA+ youth has become under further threat. I sent a letter on our behalf to Premier Scott Moe and his new Education Minister Jeremy Cockrell, and I received, of course, an evasive reply. We saw these attacks on kids' safety initially in New Brunswick under Premier Higgs, and my counterpart Jennifer Murray had her hands full dealing with that. But Premier Scott Moe said to Premier Higgs, "Hang on, I will see your discriminatory policy and I will raise it a step further." After losing an initial court battle and facing an injunction last October, Scott Moe introduced legislation to not only bring his so-called parents' rights provision, ignoring a child's wishes, even when it was likely to cause harm to a child, into a law, and he's using the notwithstanding clause to do it. And essentially using the notwithstanding clause, it's a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's saying, we know it's illegal, we know it's discriminatory, we know it won't survive a court challenge, and we're going to override all laws, including the Saskatchewan Human Rights Code, but we don't care. We're going to do it anyway. You know, Saskatchewan's workers need their government to get to work to develop a strategy to attract more good jobs and to address the skyrocketing cost of living. They don't need ministers to target youth with U.S. culture-style wars in schools. We've seen where that leads, with a cocky education minister spoiling for a fight with teachers. Boy, I've seen a lot of education ministers over the years, but Jeremy Cockrell is something else. And of course, if you look at his background, you understand why and where he's coming from. Well, we're going to stand with the teachers here in their fight. We're going to stand with the teachers everywhere. We're going to stand with our students. We're going to stand with our kids. And they never talk to any teachers. They never talk to any experts in the industry. And this isn't accidental. Same thing in Alberta. In late January, Danielle Smith announced sweeping policy changes that, guess what, will disproportionately impact trans, non-binary, and gender-diverse youth. She also prioritized wedge politics over tackling pressing economic issues. She's put a bullseye on our most vulnerable youth to score cheap points with ultra-conservatives. As I said, it's disgusting. And this announcement is connected to a wider coordinated movement to attack gender justice and reproductive rights globally. It aims to politicize the health and safety concerns of women, trans, and non-binary people for political gain. You'll see later on during this PRC in our brand new presentation on combating hate and disinformation how there are dark forces at hand here deliberately using the vulnerable as bait for their attempts to rule. I hope it'll be informative. I think they'll deliver some important messages. But it's important to not only speak up and speak loudly when attacks like this happen, we must understand what and why and by whom the attacks are coming, and stand in solidarity with oppressed people everywhere, who will always be scapegoated by the right. They're always looking for the next enemy to blame. And of course, Manitoba. Was it any surprise that in the dying gasp of the Stephenson government was literally a so-called campaign on parental rights? When I was door knocking with the team in the final days of the Manitoba election, I saw firsthand how they campaigned on bigotry, not decency. You know, tagged on some of the doors were these door knockers for the Conservatives. 2 days before the election, you know what their closing argument was? You guessed it, parental rights. It sums up everything we must fight back against. They deliberately chose a closing campaign message based on bigotry, racism, and intolerance. Let me be crystal clear. Essential medical care and basic human rights should not be politicized. The vulnerable should never be used as weapons for politicians, and kids should never be victimized to help anyone's political career. And it's not a coincidence, and that's what I find so disgusting about it. You know, it's bad enough what they're doing. The statistics are clear. Children will be hurt over this, who would otherwise not be. I mean, what happened to the idea of first do no harm? But they're way off, and they're deliberately doing it for votes. Taking what they perceive as a problem and weaponizing it, turning it into social media fodder, misinformation, deflection, lies, politics. Politics that serves the real elite, the corporations and the billionaires. But you know what? We're busy doing our own politics too, organizing and mobilizing the working class. We've seen expanded work by our organizing team in many different successful campaigns over the past year, and more are in the works. This year we've had a busy winter in the prairies. It includes a certification recently of almost 50 workers at CanCarb in Medicine Hat and 70 workers at Concord Airport Services at the Calgary International Airport. Congratulations, Bruce Fafard, for that. And you'll hear from our organizers later on as well. And last summer, I was in Vancouver and helped launch a major campaign in the Metro Vancouver area to organize Amazon workers. We've had non-stop teams on the ground for months, helping workers understand their rights and how to join Unifor. And a few weeks ago, thanks to the incredible work of the organizing department and our team on the ground, we reached a point where we applied to the BC Labour Relations Board for certification of not one, but 2 Amazon warehouses in British Columbia. Now, of course, we were this close, and Amazon boosted up the employee list, but we're a hell of a lot closer than Amazon thinks we are. So we didn't give up. We withdrew our applications for now. We've sent in more resources, more people on the ground, and we're still signing cards today. And I hope to be able to report not only that we filed for certification, but that we get automatic certification in British Columbia for well over 1,000 Amazon workers, and then we'll take it right across the country as well. So congrats to Justin, Bruce, Rocky, everyone in the organizing department. Now, I want to talk quickly about, well, not quickly, I'm not talking quickly about anything, am I? But anyway, I want to talk about Alberta, though, because there's a lot to celebrate here. You know, the PRC, we come to these things and we pass motions and then we leave. But for the executive and for everyone else, that's our marching orders. And so we have passed resolutions and recommendations over the past few years. And what did we say? We wanted to mount one of the largest boots on the ground campaign that Alberta had ever seen. Well, everyone from Alberta, I feel pretty confident we did that last year. Our team knocked on members' doors. They volunteered heavily in key ridings. We attended rallies. We put up signs. We helped with Vasaki. We had fun with food trucks. The whole campaign was a blast. And I can tell you, and there will be no one from Alberta that will disagree with this, we were by far the most mobilized force on the campaign, and it was noticed everywhere we went. The Alberta NDP received its highest share of vote in its history and elected its second highest number of MLAs. The UCP, I know they won, but they lost 11 seats in the Alberta legislature, and their mandate has been significantly reduced. The opposition Alberta NDP in that election increased its caucus to 38 seats in the legislature. 15 new seats. I can tell you that Unifor members were behind almost every single one of them. And so we came close. It came down to about 2,600 votes in about 6 ridings. And you know, I look at the other unions, and we helped out the Alberta Federation of Labour, and unfortunately, sisters, brothers, siblings, they just weren't there. They just weren't there. And I just think if we had a couple more unions putting some boots on the ground, we could have found those 2,600 votes, and we wouldn't have to deal with all the crap now in Alberta that we're dealing with. And we could triangulate Saskatchewan on either side. But anyway, so congratulations to everyone in Alberta. We also had one of our own run for office. I think she's here in the room. Tanika Chason from Local 707A. Where is she? There she is. Yeah. Thank you, Tanika, for putting your name forward. She ran in Fort McMurray Wood, Buffalo. And thank you to our member organizers. Way too many to thank. I'm just Goucharn, Jack, Dawn. I mean, there's such a list. The enthusiasm they had was amazing. And Rachel Notley ran a good campaign. We know there's an Alberta leadership race going on right now. Officially, Unifor is just staying out of it, and we'll see what the result is, because we know at the end of the day, we just want a leader that can make sure that we can beat Danielle Smith next time and send her and her Neanderthals to the dustbin of history where they bloody well belong. And the sick thing about it is, like, they have no responsibility to the electorate at all. They're lying. Remember the election? They said, oh, we're not going to talk about the pension. We're not going to take you out of the Canada Pension Plan. Guess what? A couple weeks later, they were talking about taking everyone out of the Canada Pension Plan. And I don't know what the hell they were smoking, because they somehow thought that Alberta is entitled to 1/3 of the overall Canada Pension Plan. I think the rest of the provinces would have something to say about that. What else did they promise not to do but that they're doing? Provincial police force. Now they're doing that. And now in the past few weeks, we see the full sweep of their authoritarian far-right undertones. These people want to remake the very fabric of the province. Danielle Smith and her breed of politician aren't just out for provincial power. They're out for total power. They recently introduced Bill 20, which will bring dark money back into municipal politics, allow for the creation of ideological parties, but only in Edmonton and Calgary. And it will allow, most chilling of all, the provincial cabinet to overturn bylaws and dismiss any elected official, including mayors and councillors. They're doing what demagogues and fascists everywhere do. They're trying to eliminate opposition that they could never defeat at the ballot box in Alberta because we've had repeated progressive mayors in Edmonton and Calgary. Drives them nuts. They can't defeat it at the ballot box, so they're using the provincial power they have to essentially silence a whole other level of government. No municipality will be even allowed to discuss any federal funding without the blessing from the UCP. They're actually passing a law on that. It won't be too long, frankly, before party membership becomes a path to success to unlock funding, as Bill 20 puts local governments up for sale to the highest bidder. Now, the head of Alberta Municipalities, which is not the most radical revolutionary group, this was a quote a few days ago. The possibility of locally elected officials being removed at any time for any reason is deeply unsettling and likely to have a chilling effect. It would also open the door to corporations and unions being able to donate in municipal elections. This was outlawed by Rachel Notley. Dark money, here we go again. And a few weeks earlier, Danielle Smith also introduced legislation that would give the province the power to veto any deal between the federal government and provincial entities. This is deeply disturbing stuff, and it illustrates the scale of the threat to Alberta workers in the days ahead. Now, I'm normally an optimist, but I do fear that bad news is on the horizon and that she is just getting warmed up. And so we must use this PRC to recharge, to regroup, and continue to make sure that we're out there fighting this government, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. But if anyone can do it, as we demonstrated in the last election, I know that Unifor can do it. So let's make sure we get out there and stop that Alberta government. In Manitoba, though, there is good news. Clear proof we can win. Last year, we saw disgusting campaigning, as I mentioned, by Premier Heather Stefanson, not just on the parental rights issues, but they gambled their election on a specific promise to not search for human remains. They deliberately chose to campaign against searching a landfill for the bodies of murdered Aboriginal women and misrepresented experts. I remember a picture at the start of the campaign of Heather Stefanson. We had sponsored it in Winnipeg. We were at a transit shelter, and our heading was a picture of Heather Stefanson saying, "We can stop her." I was with Chris and Rocky and Christian and some member organizers, and at the beginning of the election, it hardly seemed possible how things would unfold over the next few weeks. But we were ready. Because in the end, just like in Alberta, Unifor members rose up, came out in far greater numbers than any other union in Manitoba, by far, worked their hearts out, and guess what? At the end of the day, we did stop her. The Winnipeg Unifor office became covered in a Search the Landfill banner. We scheduled training dates for member organizers. We put them all to work in the campaign. The PRC executive and all the committees came in more than once to try and help. The sheer numbers of members contacted and the volunteers' hours put in by everyone was absolutely astonishing. On election day, we were focused on 15 hard Conservative incumbent ridings, and our team helped bring home 14 out of 15 ridings against fierce opposition. And so going into the election, the standings were PC 36, NDP 18, Liberal 3. Afterwards, NDP 34, PC 22, Liberals 1. Heather Stefanson lost her government. She lost the election. She resigned as party leader. And now, in the past few weeks, she stepped down as an MLA as well. So she's out. I want to thank Frank Wright, Gina Smoke, Josh Coles, Aaron Harris, and our member organizers, Bibbs from Local 2002, Anthony from 2169. Again, there's far too many for me to mention. You know who you were, and you were amazing. Well done. It proves that we can win against the darkness and disgusting attempts to divide us. We know that our members will actually talk to us, and they will come out and fight. So as you know, Wab Kinew has been sworn in as the Premier of Manitoba a few months ago. What you might not have known is that our member from Unifor Local 191, Tracy Schmidt, who actually wasn't supposed to win, who we supported heavily, she got elected, and she's now the Minister of Environment and Climate Change in Manitoba, a Unifor member from Local 191. And I see Joel and the folks here from 830. We also supported Unifor Local 830 member Dan Rugg, who ran in a tough riding and was really happy for the support. So we had another Unifor member stepping up. It was great to see. And it was a tremendous honor. A bunch of us got to attend the first speech from the throne for the new Manitoba NDP government last October. Manitoba's 2024 budget, which was the first under Wab Kinew, introduced a wide range of social spending commitments, and I do have to mention some of them. The budget announced a commitment to reduce barriers to unionization, as I've mentioned, $10 million to our new flyer facilities, members of Local Unifor 3003, to help them out, $20 million to search the Brady Road landfill, and it also signaled an interest in revitalizing the Manitoba Hydro Board, and Unifor, as I mentioned, Local 681, has more than 330 natural gas workers. They had significant contributions to improving access to training through more apprenticeships. They're also making targeted investments in healthcare to make care more accessible to people in communities where they live. It also contributed $116 million in new funding to build more social housing in Manitoba. So everything from co-op housing to maintaining the current supply is eligible. So it just goes to show you, all of the things that we talk about are different campaigns. Yes, we win victory at the bargaining table, but we need to win it in the streets, and we need to win it at the election time, so that we can start talking about millions and millions of dollars to help make things a little bit better. We also continue to push the new government. Frank Wright and the team met the new Labour Minister, came to our office, our Grant Road office in Winnipeg, and the whole team pushed her, and of course they pushed her on anti-scab and card check, and now we see that that's paying off as well. So the Kinew government has a clear mandate from voters to build a good economy, but now we see that the PCs still aren't fit to govern. When the Manitoba government tried to introduce anti-scab legislation, they tried to introduce card check. There's a weird rule in Manitoba that the opposition's allowed to block stuff. Guess what they tried to block? Anti-scab and card check. They just got their asses handed to them in an election, their leaders out the door, but they still found time to do the bidding of their corporate masters. And I think that tells you all you need to know. So we're very disappointed that they're going to stall good jobs, but I love how Wab Kinew, the Labour Minister, everyone is just putting forward the anti-scab, the card check. They're not defensive about it. They're like, it's the right thing to do. And it is the right thing to do. I was sick and tired over the last 20 years dealing with various NDP politicians that were almost apologetic that they were standing up for workers' rights. We need more people like Wab Kinew, more people like the Manitoba NDP government saying, it's the right thing to do. What are you talking about? And so we will get that stuff passed, and we will organize more members in Manitoba as a result. Tremendous campaign. You'll see some of the pictures here. Thank you. I will wrap up on the Saskatchewan election, but there's just a few more things I need to mention. In Winnipeg, the Social Justice Fund donated $50,000 over 2 years to build the West Central Women's Resource Centre. This is building transitional housing for women who are seeking to escape domestic violence, and the provincial and federal governments also contributed. And of course, our Unifor Indigenous Relations Officer, Regina was there. I believe Kim from Local 2002, Leanne was there as well. We're very proud to have helped that resource center. We also sponsored a large powwow last September 30th in Winnipeg. We brought the whole PRC executive and committees in, and lots of folks came out for that. And we also know upcoming June 21st is National Indigenous Peoples Day, and that's a day to celebrate enduring culture and achievements of Indigenous people. And of course, September 30th will be upon us soon also, and we should start planning for what we're going to do to contribute toward the goal of truth and reconciliation. Every day is a day that we can help someone, somewhere pushing for more action. There's also some good news as well. I want to congratulate Regina. In March, the Manitoba Families Minister, Nahanni Fontaine, announced that Manitoba will introduce its first matriarch circle, which is aimed at bolstering the protection and well-being of Indigenous women, girls, and gender-diverse individuals. This assembly draws together prominent matriarchs from across the province, and we are very happy to see that Gina Smoke was invited to be part of the group of 15 matriarchs, 2 grandmothers, knowledge keepers, and a youth representative. Congratulations. Couldn't think of anyone better. Now I know Lana will probably talk about a whole bunch of other things, pharmacare, etc., so I won't spend a bunch of time on that. But again, I know that many of us are sick and tired of social media. We all consume way too much of it. Guilty. We know there's been a rise in movements that promote hate, and that the isolation and exhaustion of the pandemic really impacted workers. And the inflation crisis and increased instability and war, things are not good for people. And these hate-promoting groups specifically target young people, equity-seeking groups, and working people with their messaging. Frankly, as you're now seeing Pierre Poilievre trying to win workers. By the way, as an aside, just to show you how out of touch they were, I was reading an article yesterday where Jagmeet Singh, Trudeau, Poilievre go to the Canada Building Trades Convention. They're all trying to get the workers' vote. Poilievre gets up there, starts telling stories about carpenters. Carpenters aren't part of the Canadian Building Trades Union. They're outside of it. They're not even in the room. So they couldn't even do the basic bloody research to figure out, when they're trying to court workers' voices, who the hell they're talking to. And we need to remember that. It sounds like a small slip-up, but it's very, very telling. And so with the continued cuts to reliable media outlets, these hate-promoting groups have taken to social media, and they're spreading disinformation with ease. And they often recruit in the educational system, or even in workplaces. So you'll see we have a presentation from the Canadian Anti-Hate Network and a recommendation, but it's very important that we fight back against the spread of these groups and provide tools and tips to our leaders and members to help them understand who is promoting what we might think might be a harmless joke or a bad taste joke. It's actually part of a deliberate political agenda. And the more we know that and we can point that out to our members, the more that they'll have the tools to be able to fight back. Now, Saskatchewan. As I mentioned, our Crown members are fighting for new agreements. The SaskTel locals are still fighting hard. The minimum wage is the lowest in the country. The government is attacking vulnerable kids and fighting with teachers. Do I really need to go on about how important it is that the PRC and all Saskatchewan locals take on this fight like never before and work our hearts out to win this campaign? We could sit back and do little and hope for change. We can complain about the need for change. But what sets Unifor apart, and what I know will set Unifor apart in this province in the next few months, is we don't just sit back and hope. We get together. We get out there. Yeah, we like to complain, sure, but we also like to work as a team to fight for what's right and just and decent and equitable. Workers must always strategize, organize, and fight for what we need, just as we've done for generations. In Canada and elsewhere, a renewed sense of militancy among workers is inspiring others to demand better from their employers and to hit picket lines if necessary. I think Lana was telling me the other day we had something like 77 requests for strike authorization, and we've had a lot of strikes. But this rise in worker militancy isn't a surprise. The corporations are going to continue to gouge us and push back and try and destroy our movement. Deep-rooted inequalities and inequities faced by women, workers of color, workers with disabilities, continues to reproduce the bad jobs and limit opportunities for large segments of workers. Because corporations just don't like to have strong unions, period. They don't like that we're one of the only organized forces in society, an organized force that can actually reach into their back pocket and take some of their money out and give it to the workers. We are the only ones who can force them to lower their profits and increase our wages, reduce their reliance on overpaid contractors, and we can actually impact production as well. No other organized force in society has the same potential power, and the corporations know this, and that's why they will stop at nothing to crush it. The only thing that has stood up to it is our self-organizing and our constant reorganization and growth. So let's do this. Let's do it for the kids. Let's do it for the teachers. Let's do it for our members, for workers, the people of Saskatchewan. And I'll tell you, the people of Canada are looking to us here to continue what we started in Manitoba, be that beacon of hope. And we know that there is still a much better world out there waiting for us. So let's continue to be proud, work hard. Thank you very much, all of you, for everything you do every single day to help our members and to build our union. Thank you very much, in solidarity, everyone.